Do you want to learn where to catch striped bass during any season? Then you're at the right place. Stay tuned. Welcome to the first edition of On the Screen Porch with Captain Kevin. Today we're going to talk about striped bass migration patterns in freshwater reservoirs and where to look for concentrations of fish during each season. And although these patterns can vary from lake to lake, they will hold true in most lakes like my home lake, Lake Murray. Reservoirs that are fed by cold water river systems can have an added variation to this migration, but they will also hold true to the migration pattern we're going to talk about today. Since we just covered post-summer in detail in a two-part series, I won't dive in deep on that subject. If you want to see the detailed video of post-summer part 1 and 2, it will be linked at the end of this video. However, here's a map of the post-summer migration pattern on Lake Murray. So now it's time to talk fall patterns and concentrations or lack thereof. Similar to post-summer, these fish are on the move, but now they have picked up the pace. They've had time to feed and regain strength, and the temperatures have dropped down into upper 70s, which is something that will just revitalize them and help them to continue their journey. As you'll see on the map here, locations are similar to the post-summer, except for the concentrations are moving in closer to the shoreline and from the mouths to midway back in the creeks where they're feeding. There will be fish still following the river channel as they continue to migrate, but the feeding fish will tend to concentrate in the mouths of these creeks or up above mid-lake where that river channel starts necking down. Planer boards with a variety of lengths of line behind the boards and some different size weights where you can cover some ground, as well as some free lines and down rods to cover the water column, as well as spread and cover a wide area. That brings us to late fall. I broke fall into two sections because, as I said earlier, striped bass tend to pick up the pace and make long runs during the fall migration. You'll notice in my example that in late fall, most of the concentration of striped bass, but not all, have left the big bodies of water. The fish are now moving farther back into the creeks and up into the middle to upper portions of the river. In late fall, fish tend to move in and out of creeks and up and down these river channels simply based on the concentration of the bait. If you find the bait, normally the fish aren't far behind. Go-to technique in this late fall, in my opinion, is planer boards and free lines so you can cover a lot of ground. Now winter. Winter can be some of the best fishing, followed by a day of the worst. Cold fronts can really put a damper on the bite, so you have to be mentally prepared for a struggle if you choose to fish on the day behind the cold front. As you can see in my example, I added some fish to some locations and more fish farther in the backs of creeks and farther up the river arms for this wintertime migration. Now, I personally like to fish the upper lake to up in the rivers in the wintertime simply because I believe there's a higher concentration of fish in those areas. In winter, I like to target shallow points and shoals in the bends of the creeks or rivers, whichever one it is I'm fishing that particular day. And again, planer boards are definitely my go-to in the wintertime, along with some free lines. Now, this brings us to spring. I would say probably spring is the favorite time to fish for the majority of anglers, especially those searching out those bigger fish. The fish are very strong and active this time of year because they've been feeding all winter, building up their strength to prepare themselves for the upcoming spawn. During the spring, striped bass will stage in extremely shallow water, getting ready to ambush bait fish that are moving into those shallows, preparing to spawn. Usually this will happen in higher concentrations in the backs of creeks and up in the rivers. The best way, in my opinion, to target these fish is to spread your planer boards out away from the boat so that you can target those shallow areas along the bank, but you not cross over those fish with your boat. If you cross over the fish with the boat, more than likely you're going to push the fish off before your bait ever get there. So planer boards are the way to target these fish in these shallow areas. And when I say shallow, don't be afraid to get your boat stuck on bottom while you're pulling. 1 to 3 feet is a very common depth to find striped bass feeding during the spring. Also, another great method to target these striped bass in the spring, which is a method that I rarely use just because it's just not my favorite way to fish, but it is a great way to fish, is to anchor up and throw some cut bait out on the bottom. Now, this can be a very productive way to fish, and it can be very consistent. So never pass up the opportunity to try some cut bait if something else is not working. Now I want to get into early summer. So I did break summer into 3 sections, into early, summer, post-summer, because I believe to cover it properly we need to break it down into sections, because it can be such a drastic change in such a short amount of time. Although the areas does not change drastically, the depth and the way you target them can change drastically. In early summer, striped bass start moving back down the lake and then start moving off into deeper waters. Now I believe this is a great time for a beginner to get started, because you can fish with a variety of techniques and be very successful. Planer boards will work for fish that are shallow, especially early morning. Down rods for those fish that are moving off deeper. And then cut bait is still a very productive technique in early summer. Also, people who like to troll, trolling can be a very effective way to catch striped bass in the early summer. And there's also the occasional schooling fish that come to the top, and you can use some top water baits to target those fish. Not to mention, the weather is usually great for those fair weather fishermen. So personally, I think early summer is a great time to get started fishing. Now summer, what I consider the summertime migration pattern. Basically, these fish in late June through usually early August go to the lower end of the lake where you have the deeper, cooler water, and those striped bass love to be in that cooler water. So they'll go down and they'll relate to points and ridges and humps, usually somewhere in the 40 to 80 foot range. It will vary from day to day, week to week, but you can use your mapping and your sonar to target these big schools of fish in these areas, and then fish them with down rods. You can check out this video I have about how to rig a down rod, and go rig your down rods, get out there, find those fish with that depth finder, and basically just drop those live bait right down in those fish, keep it right above them with those down rods. Striped bass prefer the cooler waters and the deep parts of the lake in the heat of the summer, and that's why we find them concentrated here. Fishing these massive schools of fish in deep water can make for an action-packed day and a very fun time. How long this pattern lasts depends solely on the dissolved oxygen levels in the lake. Once those dissolved oxygen levels begin to deplete in those deeper water columns, then these fish will begin to get weak, and even some years they will start to die off. If you'd like to know more information about that, check out this video. Once this happens, that would bring us back to post-summer, which we started this video with. We hope we've given you some information that will help you become a better fisherman. If you like the info we provide for you, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That's all for now. If you want to learn more about post-summer, check out a couple of our most recent informative videos.